10 scientists, all of them connected to the most classified programs in American history: nuclear weapons, rocket propulsion, deep space, fusion energy. And within a 4-year window, they were either dead or gone. This is not a Reddit thread. This is not a conspiracy forum. This is a federal investigation, confirmed by the FBI, the White House, the House Oversight Committee, NASA, the Department of Energy, and the Department of Defense. And when the President of the United States sits through a briefing on this case and walks out saying pretty serious stuff, you stop and you pay attention. Where are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments. Because no matter where you are in the world, what you are about to hear is going to stay with you. On April 15, 2026, the FBI released a formal public statement. Word for word, it read, "The FBI is spearheading the effort to look for connections into the missing and deceased scientists. We are working with the Department of Energy, the Department of Defense, and with our state and local law enforcement partners to find answers." Read that again slowly. The FBI, the Department of Energy, the Department of Defense, all in the same room, all looking at the same files, all asking the same question. Are these cases connected? Think about what it takes to get those agencies around one table. These are not departments that coordinate casually. These are institutions that operate in separate silos, with separate chains of command, separate clearance levels, and separate mandates. When they sit down together, it means the pattern they found was too significant to ignore. And here is what makes this case different from anything you have seen before. Every single person on this list held access to technology that foreign governments would spend billions to obtain. Asteroid deflection systems, nuclear fusion reactors, rocket propulsion patents, classified satellite instruments designed to scan other worlds. These were not academics writing papers in quiet offices. These were people with security clearances, people who knew things that most Americans will never be allowed to know. FBI Director Kash Patel did not mince his words. He said publicly, and these are his exact words, "If there are any connections that lead to nefarious conduct or conspiracy, this FBI will make the appropriate arrests." The director of the FBI used the word nefarious in a public statement about scientists. If you are new to this channel, subscribe right now. We do not do surface-level coverage here. We follow the evidence. We go where the facts lead. And the facts in this case lead somewhere deeply unsettling. 10 names, 10 files, one active federal investigation that has not finished yet. But before we open the first file, you need to understand exactly what kind of people we are talking about. Because once you see their work, once you understand what they knew and what they were building, the pattern the FBI found will hit very differently. The first file starts at NASA, and it starts with silence. The Jet Propulsion Laboratory sits in the foothills of the San Gabriel Mountains in Pasadena, California. It is one of the most consequential research facilities on the planet. The scientists who work there do not just study space. They build the instruments that extend humanity's reach into it. They design the systems that protect Earth. They develop the technology that other nations spend decades trying to replicate. 2 of those scientists are now dead. Both were principal researchers. Both died within 12 months of each other, and neither death was ever publicly explained. The first name is Michael David Hicks. He was 59 years old. He joined JPL in 1998 and spent the next 24 years there as a principal research scientist. That title is not ceremonial. At JPL, principal scientist is a designation reserved for individuals who drive the laboratory's core research agenda. Hicks earned it. He worked on the DART mission, NASA's Double Asteroid Redirection Test, the program where NASA deliberately directed a spacecraft into an asteroid to determine whether humanity could deflect one on a collision course with Earth. He contributed to Deep Space One, a mission that executed a flyby of Comet Borrelly in 2001. He authored more than 80 peer-reviewed scientific publications over the course of his career. On July 30, 2023, Michael Hicks died at the age of 59. No cause of death was released to the public. No autopsy results were disclosed. NASA issued no statement. JPL issued no statement. The only public acknowledgement of his passing was a brief obituary posted by his family. His daughter Julia told CNN that her father had been dealing with known medical issues, but the specific cause of his death was never confirmed publicly. A man who spent nearly a quarter century working on systems designed to protect this planet from asteroid impact. And the agency he gave that career to said nothing when he was gone. That silence is not standard. That silence is a data point. 12 months later, the second file opened. July 4, 2024, Frank Maywald, age 61. Also a JPL principal. A title the laboratory awards only to scientists who make what it formally describes as exceptional individual contributions. Maywald managed the development of advanced satellite systems, instruments capable of scanning Earth and other planetary bodies with precision. Systems specifically designed to detect biological signatures on moons like Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon, and Enceladus, one of Saturn's moons, both considered among the most promising locations in the solar system for signs of life beyond Earth. In June 2023, just 1 year before his death, Maywald led a research initiative focused on helping future deep space missions identify biological markers. He was not winding down. He was accelerating. He died on July 4, 2024, in Los Angeles. No cause of death was disclosed, no autopsy was conducted, no statement from NASA, no statement from JPL. An obituary confirmed he had simply passed away. Ask yourself something. 2 principal scientists, the same laboratory, 12 months apart, both working on programs tied to planetary defense and deep space exploration. And the agency that employed them both, an agency with a full communications department, a public affairs office, and a global media presence, said absolutely nothing. What time is it where you are right now? Drop it in the comments. Because wherever you are watching a case that the United States government is now treating as a potential national security matter. The institutional silence around Hicks and Maywald is not just unusual. Former intelligence analysts who reviewed these cases told reporters it is the kind of silence that does not happen by accident. It happens by decision. 2 files, 2 unexplained losses, 1 laboratory, and the FBI had not even started looking yet. Because the next person on this list did not die in a lab or a hospital. She vanished on a mountain trail, and she was carrying something far more valuable than a hiking pack. Victim 3, Monica Resza, NASA JPL Aerojet Rocketdyne. June 22, 2025, age 60. June 22, 2025, 9:10 in the morning. Monica Resza left her home and drove toward the San Gabriel Wilderness inside Angeles National Forest. Her destination was the trail leading to the summit of Waterman Mountain, a route she knew. A trail she had hiked before. She was 60 years old, experienced, and physically capable. She never came back. But here is what the missing persons report did not capture. What the initial search teams did not fully appreciate until federal analysts began pulling her file. Monica Resza was not just a hiker who chose the wrong morning. She was a scientist who held a patent, a unique specialized patent for a metal alloy she personally developed, a material engineered specifically for use in rocket manufacturing, a material directly connected to America's launch infrastructure. She had worked at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. She had worked at Aerojet Rocketdyne, one of the primary propulsion contractors for the United States military and space program. And in the period leading up to her disappearance, she had recently stepped into a new leadership role, heading an entire division at JPL. She was not winding down her career. She was at the height of it. Picture the trail on that morning. The San Gabriel Wilderness in late June. The air still cool before the California heat builds. The sound of dry brush and distant birds. A woman who knows where she is going, moving at her own pace, up a familiar path, and then nothing. No distress signal. No emergency beacon activation. No trace of physical evidence indicating where the trail ended for her. She was recorded leaving at 9:10 a.m., and the wilderness simply absorbed her. Search and rescue teams went in, then went in again and again. Months of coordinated operations across difficult, uneven terrain. Aerial searches. Ground teams. Nothing was recovered, no physical evidence, no remains. No personal belongings found along the route. Monica Resza remains missing today. When the House Oversight Committee began compiling its list of scientists connected to sensitive national programs, scientists whose deaths or disappearances warranted federal examination. Her name was on it. And the reason her name was on it was not just the circumstances of her disappearance. It was what she carried in her mind and on paper. A patent on rocket technology. Decades of institutional knowledge from two of the most sensitive aerospace organizations in the United States. And a new leadership position at JPL that she had only just begun. Investigators noted something that experienced search and rescue personnel found difficult to reconcile. Monica Resa was not a casual weekend hiker. She was an experienced outdoors woman who knew the terrain. People with her profile, physically prepared, route familiar, experienced in outdoor environments, do not simply vanish on trails they have walked before. The absence of any physical evidence across months of searching is, in the language of federal analysts reviewing this case, statistically inconsistent with an accidental disappearance. What the weather was like that day on Waterman Mountain. What she was thinking as she drove toward the trailhead. Whether she noticed anything unusual before she stepped onto that path. None of that is known. None of it may ever be known. What is known is this. A woman with a rocket propulsion patent, JPL clearance, and Aerojet Rocketdyne experience walked into a California wilderness area on a June morning and has not been seen since. The FBI flagged her case. Federal analysts are still reviewing it, and the next person on this list did not disappear on a trail. He walked out of his front door in New Mexico and left behind everything that would have helped anyone find him. Victim 4, William Neal McCasland, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Missing February 27, 2026. Age 68, February 27, 2026. Albuquerque, New Mexico, approximately 11 in the morning. Retired Air Force Major General William Neal McCasland walked out of his home. He did not take his cell phone. He did not take his prescription eyeglasses. He did not take his fitness tracking devices. He walked out of his front door and into the February air, and he did not come back. Let that settle for a moment. A man who spent decades navigating some of the most operationally complex environments in American military history. A man trained to assess risk, manage hostile conditions, and make calculated decisions under pressure. That man left his house without the tools that any experienced outdoorsman, let alone a decorated military general, would consider basic preparation. No phone, no glasses, no tracking device. That is not an oversight. That is a detail investigators circled immediately. McCasland was 68 years old. By every account, from people who knew him personally, he was physically capable, mentally sharp, and an experienced outdoorsman who had spent years hiking the terrain around Albuquerque. His military record was not that of a desk officer. He was a man who had operated in demanding environments across a long and decorated career. The people who knew him best told investigators he was not someone who made careless decisions. He was not someone who forgot things. And yet, no phone, no glasses, no tracking device. But here is the detail that changed the entire weight of this case. William Neal McCasland did not just serve in the Air Force. He commanded Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. And if you know what Wright-Patterson represents within the architecture of American classified military research, you understand immediately why the FBI was involved in his disappearance within 2 weeks of him going missing. Wright-Patterson is not an ordinary military installation. It houses the Air Force Research Laboratory, the National Air and Space Intelligence Center, and has been connected to some of the most sensitive aerospace research programs in United States military history. The level of classified information that passes through that base, the programs, the technology, the intelligence, operates at clearance levels that most federal employees will never reach. A general who commanded that installation does not carry ordinary knowledge. He carries institutional memory that foreign intelligence services would consider extraordinarily valuable. The FBI's involvement within 14 days is the signal here. Standard missing persons cases do not draw federal attention that quickly. Local law enforcement handles the initial response. Search and rescue coordinates the ground operation. The FBI enters when there is a reason, a profile, a connection, a set of circumstances that elevates a disappearance beyond the local level. In McCasland's case, that reason did not need to be stated publicly. His career history stated it for them. Search and rescue teams combed the terrain surrounding Albuquerque. The landscape in that region of New Mexico is unforgiving. High desert, rocky elevation changes, sparse vegetation, extreme temperature swings between day and night in late February. Teams went out, searches were conducted, and General William Neal McCasland was not found. He remains missing today, a man who survived a military career that took him through some of the most demanding operational environments on Earth. A man who knew how to navigate, a man who knew how to stay alive in difficult terrain. He walked out of his home on a February morning without his phone, without his glasses, and without a trace. The FBI is still looking, and while they search for the general, another file on that federal desk was already open. A file from a laboratory in Massachusetts. A file about a man who never made it inside his own front door. Vict 5, Nuno Loureiro, MIT Plasma Science and Fusion Center. Died December 16, 2025. Age: there is a technology that every major nation on Earth is racing to control. Not oil, not rare earth minerals, not artificial intelligence, nuclear fusion. The process of replicating the energy of the sun itself. Clean, virtually limitless power generated by forcing hydrogen atoms together under extreme heat and pressure. The nation that masters fusion energy first does not just win an energy race. It rewrites the global balance of power permanently. Nuno Loureiro knew that better than almost anyone alive. He was 47 years old, a professor of nuclear science and engineering and physics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And he was the director of MIT's Plasma Science and Fusion Center, the most advanced nuclear fusion research facility at one of the most prestigious scientific institutions in the world. Every day he went to work, he was pushing that technology forward. Every paper he published, every IXT team ran, every breakthrough his center produced moved America closer to solving one of the most strategically consequential scientific problems in human history. On the evening of December 15, 2025, Nuno Loureiro returned to his residence in Brookline, Massachusetts. What happened next was captured in the emergency response record. Someone was waiting. Loureiro sustained multiple gunshot wounds at his home. Emergency responders transported him to a nearby hospital. He survived through the night, and on the morning of December 16, 2025, he was pronounced dead. He was 47 years old. MIT's president sent a letter to the university community. She described it as a shocking loss. She said his legacy would live on in his students and in his work. The scientific community mourned publicly, and law enforcement began working the case. For weeks, no suspect was named. No motive was released. The investigation moved quietly while the rest of the country processed what had happened. The director of the most advanced fusion research center in the United States had been fatally wounded at his own home, and nobody knew who did it or why. Then on April 29, 2026, the FBI closed that specific question. They determined conclusively that Loureiro had been targeted by a man named Claudio Manuel Neves Valente, acting alone, driven by personal grievance. Not espionage, not a state-sponsored operation. Personal spite, according to the official finding. And yet, investigators kept this case on the list. Here is why that matters. The official finding answers who pulled the trigger. It does not answer why the director of America's leading fusion program was accessible enough to be targeted at his private residence. It does not answer what Loureiro was working on in the weeks before December 15th. It does not answer whether anyone with an interest in his research knew his location, his schedule, or his home address. The FBI's ruling on motive addresses the individual act. The broader question, the one that congressional investigators and federal analysts kept returning to, is whether the timing of this case, falling directly inside the window of every other case on this list, is something that can be filed away as pure coincidence. Ask yourself this: if you were the analyst sitting across from that file, a file about the director of MIT's nuclear fusion program, fatally wounded at his home, in the same 4-year window as 9 other scientists, connected to classified American programs, would you close that folder or would you keep it open? The FBI kept it open, and the next file on that desk was already waiting. Another scientist, another early morning, another address in California that someone apparently knew about. Victim 6, Gillmore, Caltech, Infrared Processing Center. Incident, February 16, 2026. Age 67, 6:10 in the morning. February 16, 2026. The Antelope Valley Desert in Los Angeles County is cold at that hour. The kind of cold that sits low to the ground in the high desert, still, air, pale light just beginning to break across the horizon. The silence of a remote, unincorporated community called Llano that most people in Los Angeles have never heard of. Sheriff's deputies responded to reports of an assault at a private residence. What they found when they arrived was Carl Gilmore on his porch. He had sustained a gunshot injury to the torso. He was 67 years old. Carl Gilmore was not just a resident of a quiet desert community. He was a Caltech astrophysicist and a research scientist at the Infrared Processing and Analysis Center, one of the most respected astronomical research institutions in the United States. He had spent more than 4 decades contributing to humanity's understanding of the universe. 40 years of work, 40 years of data, discovery, and publication that his colleagues described as foundational to modern astronomy. But it was one specific discovery that his peers kept returning to when they spoke about his legacy. Carl Gilmore had done something that his colleague Sergio Fardo Acosta, who worked alongside him for 26 years, called ingenious. He had detected the presence of water vapor on a planet outside our solar system, an exoplanet, a world orbiting a distant star. The detection of water vapor on an exoplanet is not a minor footnote in astronomical research. It is a direct indicator in the search for conditions that could support life beyond Earth. Gilmore had also contributed extensively to the study of near-Earth objects and the structural mapping of the Milky Way. Sergio Fardo Acosta told reporters that Gilmore was very famous in astronomy, that his legacy would live on forever. Those words were spoken about a man who was found on his own porch on a February morning before the sun had fully risen. A suspect was arrested, 29-year-old Freddie Snyder, who had also been charged separately with carjacking and burglary in the same period. Authorities indicated the incident at Gilmore's residence may have been connected to those other criminal activities. A pattern of opportunistic crime in the area. A wrong address. A wrong morning. That is the official framing. And it may be exactly right. But here is the question that investigators and federal analysts kept placing back on the table. Of all the residences in the Antelope Valley, of all the addresses in that remote stretch of high desert, why was this particular home approached at 6:10 in the morning? Why this address? Why this man? Those questions do not have confirmed answers. What they have is a place on a federal list, a list being reviewed by the FBI, the Department of Energy, the Department of Defense, and NASA simultaneously. Carl Gilmore's case sits on that list not because the official explanation has been disproven. It sits there because in the context of everything else on that list, the question of coincidence becomes harder to dismiss with each additional file. The next file is the one that changes the entire temperature of this investigation. Because the scientist did not wait for something to happen to her. She told everyone around her it was already happening, and then she was gone. Vic Sevenmy Escridge Institute for Exotic Science died, June 11, 2022. Age 34. Most of the people on this list did not see it coming. Or if they did not say so out loud. They went to work, they ran their experiments, they filed their reports, and then something happened to them that nobody has fully explained. Amy Eskridge was different. She said it out loud. She said it directly. She said it to the people around her on camera, in interviews, in private conversations, in messages she knew might one day be read by strangers. And what she said was this: "If anything ever happens to me, if anyone ever tells you I took my own life, do not believe them." She was 34 years old. She lived in Huntsville, Alabama, a city that sits at the center of America's aerospace and defense research infrastructure. She co-founded the Institute for Exotic Science, an organization focused on experimental propulsion research. And the specific area her team was working in was not conventional rocketry or standard aerospace engineering. She was researching concepts that sit at the outermost edge of known physics, including what she described as anti-gravity propulsion technology. In a 2020 interview, she made a statement that at the time many people dismissed. She said her team had made a discovery in the field of anti-gravity, and she said that immediately after that discovery, everything around them began to fall apart. People started interfering with their work. Their research was being disrupted. She described a sustained pattern of harassment and sabotage that she believed was directly connected to what her team had found. She did not say it once. She said it repeatedly, across multiple interviews, to colleagues, to people she trusted. And then she went further. She told a colleague named Frank Milber something that he has since repeated publicly and on the record. She told him that if she was ever found dead, if anyone ever said she had died by suicide, he should not believe it. She was specific. She was clear. She said she was not suicidal. She also showed him photographs, images of her hands, discolored, showing visible physical injury. She told him she believed she had been exposed to directed energy, that someone had used a directed energy device against her. She presented photographic evidence of physical injuries she attributed to that exposure, and she asked him to remember what she had shown him. On June 11, 2022, Amy Eskridge's death was ruled a self-inflicted firearms incident. She was 34 years old. After her death, her co-founder Samuel Reed posted her messages and statements publicly. The record she had built, the interviews, the warnings, the photographs, the conversations, was now visible to anyone who looked. And people looked. Former FBI Special Agent Andrew Black, who had led the FBI's Arizona field office, addressed this case directly on national television. What he said was precise and carefully worded. He said that just because Amy's family might believe she took her own life does not mean the other claims she made were not valid. He said those concerns, the harassment, the threats, the fear she documented, may have played a role in the circumstances of her death. And he said that is exactly why the FBI needed to examine her case seriously. Read that again. A former senior FBI official said on national television that the claims of a scientist who warned people she was being targeted deserve serious federal examination. Regardless of what the official ruling says, Amy Eskridge built a record. She documented everything she could. She warned the people closest to her. She left a trail of evidence pointing directly at her own fear. And the federal investigation now reviewing her case is asking the question she spent years trying to get someone to ask. What did she find? And did what she find have anything to do with how she died? Those questions remain open. And the next file on this list belongs to a man whose disappearance his own family attributes to grief, but whose name still ended up on the same federal desk as everyone else. 7 names, 7 files. 7 people connected to the most sensitive scientific programs in the United States, dead, missing, or gone under circumstances that no federal agency has been able to fully and publicly explain. And then there is the 8th. Victim 8, Jason Thomas, Novartis, Cambridge, missing December 12, 2025, age 45. Jason Thomas was 45 years old. He was a researcher at Novartis, one of the largest and most influential pharmaceutical companies in the world, operating out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. His work gave him access to sensitive research, the kind of research that sits behind security protocols, proprietary firewalls, and institutional confidentiality agreements. He was not a public figure. He was not someone whose name appeared in press releases or congressional briefings, until it did. On the night of December 12, 2025, Jason Thomas left his home in Wakefield, Massachusetts. His wife confirmed that he had been carrying an enormous emotional weight in the weeks leading up to that night. Both of his parents had died within a short period of each other. The grief was real. The struggle was documented by the people closest to him. He walked out of his home that December night, and he did not come back. Search operations were launched. Days passed, then weeks. The kind of weeks that stretch into a particular silence that families of missing persons know too well. Every morning that begins without a phone call. Every evening that ends without an answer. On March 17, 2026, that silence broke in the worst possible way. Human remains were recovered from a body of water in Massachusetts. Preliminary identification based on the clothing of the recovered individual suggested the remains belonged to Jason Thomas. A formal identification process was initiated. His family believes his disappearance was connected to grief, to loss. to a man who was carrying more than he could hold alone on a December night. That explanation is human, it is compassionate, and it may be entirely correct. But here is what changed the weight of his case. The House Oversight Committee, the same congressional body that sent formal letters to NASA, the Department of Energy, and the Department of Defense, included Jason Thomas on their official list. They identified him specifically as a pharmaceutical researcher based in Cambridge with access to sensitive research. They flagged his case for federal examination alongside every other name on this list. That means someone at the congressional level looked at the circumstances of his disappearance, looked at his professional profile, looked at what he had access to, and decided his case belonged in the same federal review as a JPL rocket scientist, a nuclear fusion director, and a general who once commanded the most classified air base in American history. His family's explanation and the federal flag are not mutually exclusive. Both can exist at the same time, but the flag exists. And the FBI, the Department of Energy, the Department of Defense, and NASA are all aware of it. 8 names, 8 files. And the question that has been building since the very first chapter of this investigation is about to get its most complete answer yet. Because when federal analysts laid all 8 cases side by side, and then added the 2 that are still missing, what they found was not a collection of isolated events. What they found was a pattern, and that pattern has a shape. 8 individual cases, 8 separate jurisdictions, 8 different institutions, 8 different causes, or in several cases, no confirmed cause at all. Looked at individually, each one has an explanation attached to it. A medical issue, a personal grievance, a criminal incident, grief, a hiking trail, a February morning in New Mexico. But the FBI does not look at cases individually when the cases keep pointing at the same wall. Picture the room where this analysis happened. Federal analysts, congressional staff, representatives from the FBI, the Department of Energy, the Department of Defense, and NASA, all seated around the same table with the same files spread out in front of them. 8 names, 8 timelines, 8 institutional affiliations mapped side by side on the same surface. And when they drew the lines between them, the picture that formed was not random. Here is what they found. Every single person on this list had verified access to sensitive national security information, not adjacent to it, not tangentially connected to it, directly inside it. Michael Hicks worked on planetary defense systems. Frank Maywald developed instruments for deep space biological detection. Monica Resa held a patent on rocket manufacturing technology. General McCasland commanded the most classified aerospace research installation in American military history. Nuno Loureiro directed America's most advanced nuclear fusion research program. Carl Gilmore spent 4 decades mapping the universe from one of the world's most respected astronomical research centers. Amy Eskridge was researching experimental propulsion at the outer edge of known physics. Jason Thomas had access to sensitive pharmaceutical research at one of the largest biotech operations in the world. 8 people, 8 different fields, all of them sitting inside the perimeter of what the United States government considers strategically sensitive. Then the analysts looked at the timeline. The deaths and disappearances occurred between June 2022 and February 2026. A concentrated 44-month window. In that same window, the United States was navigating one of the most intense periods of technological competition with foreign state actors in modern history. The race for nuclear fusion dominance, the acceleration of hypersonic weapons development, the expansion of deep space programs by China and Russia, the strategic value of rocket propulsion patents, the global competition for pharmaceutical and biotech supremacy. These are not abstract geopolitical observations. These are the exact fields that every person on this list was working in. The institutional overlap compounded the pattern further. Multiple cases connected directly to JPL. Cases connected to MIT, Caltech, and Wright-Patterson. Institutions that do not just conduct research, they conduct research that foreign intelligence services actively target. The FBI's own counterintelligence division has publicly documented the scale of foreign efforts to penetrate American scientific institutions. That documentation existed before any of these cases opened, and then there was the silence. the complete institutional absence of public cause of death across multiple cases involving scientists at major government-affiliated laboratories. Former intelligence analysts told reporters that this level of silence, coordinated across multiple agencies and institutions, does not emerge organically. It is the result of deliberate decisions made at levels above standard public affairs protocol. FBI Director Kash Patel stood in front of cameras and said it plainly. His exact words: "If there are any connections that lead to nefarious conduct or conspiracy, this FBI will make the appropriate arrests." The director of the FBI does not use the word nefarious casually. That word carries legal and investigative weight. It signals that what the Bureau has seen inside these files has moved beyond the threshold of routine inquiry. President Trump confirmed he had been personally briefed. He told reporters, "I hope it's random, but we're going to know the answer." The President of the United States sat through a national security briefing about dead and missing scientists and walked out hoping it was random. What does it mean when the President hopes something is random? It means the alternative is something nobody in that briefing room wanted to say out loud. The Republican leadership of the House Oversight Committee sent formal letters to NASA, the Department of Energy, and the Department of Defense. They asked each agency to share everything, to look for missing links, to identify what connected these cases. And what came back from those agencies is now inside an active federal investigation that has not concluded. The pattern exists. The FBI confirmed it exists. What the pattern means, who built it, who is responsible for it, whether it was constructed deliberately or assembled by coincidence, that answer is still being written. And while it is being written, 2 people on this list are still out there somewhere, still missing, still unaccounted for. And the final question this investigation has to answer is the one that has been sitting underneath every single chapter of this case from the very beginning. Here is what the FBI has confirmed, not what forums claim, not what anonymous sources suggest, what the actual federal investigation has produced and placed on the public record. They have confirmed that all 10 individuals had verified access to sensitive national security information. They have confirmed that the cases span multiple institutions: JPL, MIT, Caltech, Wright-Patterson, and Novartis Cambridge. They have confirmed that the deaths and disappearances occurred within a concentrated window between 2022 and 2026. They have confirmed that not one of these individual cases, when examined in isolation, produced a clear, fully explained, and publicly documented resolution. And they have confirmed that the FBI, the Department of Energy, the Department of Defense, and NASA are all actively coordinating to answer the same question. Are these cases connected? That question has not been answered yes, but it has not been answered no. And in a federal investigation of this nature, one that touches national security, classified programs, and potential foreign interference, the absence of a no is not neutral. It is a signal. Think about what it takes to keep 10 separate case files open simultaneously across 4 federal agencies. The resources, the personnel, the interagency coordination, the security clearances required just to access some of the background material connected to these individuals. Federal agencies do not sustain that level of coordinated effort for cases they believe are unrelated. They sustain it because the evidence they have seen, evidence that has not been made public, gives them reason to keep looking. 2 people on this list are still missing today. Monica Resa, the rocket scientist who held a patent on propulsion technology, who had just stepped into a new leadership role at JPL, who left her home on a June morning in 2025, walked into the San Gabriel wilderness and never came back. Search teams went in repeatedly. Nothing was recovered. She has been missing for nearly a year. Her family has not stopped looking. Federal analysts have not closed her file. General William Neal McCasland, the retired Air Force Major General who commanded Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, who walked out of his Albuquerque home on February 27, 2026 without his phone, without his glasses, without his fitness devices, and without a trace. A man who spent his entire career learning how to navigate hostile environments. A man who knew how to stay alive in difficult terrain. Gone. The FBI entered his case within 2 weeks. They are still working it. These are not profiles of people who simply disappear. These are profiles of people who knew exactly how to stay found. And they are gone. We do not know who fatally wounded Carl Gilmore on his porch in the California desert at 6:10 in the morning. Beyond the arrest that has been made, we do not know whether the personal grievance motive behind Nuno Loureiro's death tells the complete story of why the director of America's leading fusion program was accessible at his private residence that December evening. We do not know what Amy Eskridge discovered in her research, and whether what she discovered has any connection to the circumstances of her death. We do not know where Jason Thomas went on that December night, or whether his case belongs on this list for reasons beyond grief. What we do know is the weight of what these 10 people collectively carried: asteroid deflection, nuclear fusion, rocket propulsion patents, deep space biological detection, classified military aerospace, experimental propulsion research, sensitive pharmaceutical development, the keys to some of the most strategically valuable technology on the planet, held by 10 people who are now either dead or missing within a 44-month window. What we know is that the President of the United States was briefed and walked out saying, "Pretty serious stuff." What we know is that the FBI director used the word nefarious in a public statement about these cases. What we know is that 4 federal agencies are sitting around the same table right now, looking at the same files, asking the same question. The FBI found a pattern. They confirmed it exists. They are following it. And wherever that pattern leads, whoever or whatever is waiting at the end of it is about to face the full institutional weight of the United States federal government. The file is still open. And if this investigation produces what some federal analysts believe it might, the answer, when it finally comes, will not be quiet. If you have followed this case from the beginning, if you have sat with every name, every file, every unanswered question, then you already understand why this story matters beyond the headlines. These were real people. Scientists, researchers, a general, a woman, who warned everyone around her. Real careers, real work, real contributions to the technology that protects this country and advances human knowledge. Subscribe to the Case Files Collective if you are not already here. We do not do surface-level coverage. We follow the evidence. We go where the facts lead. And when this investigation moves, when the FBI's open file produces its next confirmed development, we will be the first to break it down for you. Fact by fact, file by file. The case is not closed, neither are we.